Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Antique Talk. My name is Mike, and I own 66 Unique Antiques. We're a 9,000 square foot, 75 vendor antique shop located in Nashville, Michigan. Yes, there is a Nashville in Michigan. Now, I've been in the antiquing world for well over a decade, and I've dealt with every person you can think of. Vendors, customers, sellers, resellers, buyers, you name it. I've dealt with it. So I feel like I have a pretty good pulse on the antiquing world. So what's trending up, what's trending down, what people are buying, what people are selling, what people are looking for. I also have a very high, opinion on what people are saying and what is the word going around the antiquing world, I guess we'd say. So today I'm here to bust, which in my opinion is the biggest myth right now going on in the antiquing world. So much so that I have to take time out of working, because I'm working today, just to let you guys know. I have to take time out of working to literally address this. So you guys got to know that I hear this probably well over 10, 15 times a month, which is a lot considering all the people we deal with. Here it is. Young kids don't care about antiques. Oh, it's so bothersome. Now we're going to get into a little bit of this once we get into the video here, but guys, I'm telling you, that is the biggest myth going on in this antiquing world right now, is that young kids don't even care about the stuff that your parents and grandparents and all these other people had. They don't want it. They don't want nothing to do with it. Yes, of course there's outliers. There's going to be kids that are going to not nothing to do with it, but that's not everybody. Trust me, as we'll get into. So guys, let's start off this video by talking a little bit of history about what my experience is dealing with the older generation in antiques. All right, I figured what better way than to have a small store tour so I can show you guys actual stuff in persons of what is selling, what's not selling, what the older generation was trying to do compared to the newer generation and what they're looking for. So first off, I want to talk about, and this is the main point, it's not that young kids don't like antiques. They just don't like the older generation's antiques. And I really want you to think about that as we walk around and show you this quick store tour I give you guys. So when we first started off in the business, we had the older generation telling us what is popular, what's selling, because that's who you listen to. The antique stores have been around for 20, 30 years, and they were telling us, okay, Mike, come here, check this out. Crocs. Okay, so we're like, oh, great, look it. We have Crocs. I mean, we bought Crocs like crazy, and they just didn't sell. We're like, man, they told us Crocs sold. What's up with that? I thought Crocs were the ticket. I thought Crocs were where we should go. And man, we're like, what do we do now? Okay. People are like, oh, I got dish sets. I got tons of dish sets. We'd get phone calls daily about dish sets. Okay, so we bought a few dish sets, as you'll see up here. Dish sets, dish sets. Then look over here, we got more dish sets. It turns out people are not buying dish sets. And we're like, oh, why is that? But then it turns out, people don't have the big families they used to have. So if you don't have the big families you used to have, it's not functional to have a 150-piece dish set anymore, because there's not families of 10 anymore. There's families of 3 or 4 or 5. I mean, so you really got to start considering your clientele, and that's what we started looking at. Okay, what are people looking for? People want decor. Okay, so let's go look at decor. What are people looking to decorate with? Maybe glassware. Okay, let's look at glass. And we come over here, we found these amazing pieces of Fenton. Let's look at these pieces of Fenton. Absolutely gorgeous, as you'll see. And like, all right, and then we started selling Fenton really well. So we had Fenton, we had Pyrex, like, man, this is great. What else are people collecting? The older generation was telling us, oh, you want Victrolas, you want 45s. We're like, no, people don't want that. People want records. Okay, people want music. Let's go show them this. Okay, guys, back here, we got Alice Cooper. We got Billy Idol. We got, gosh, who else do we have? The Beach Boys, we have the Judds, we have the Doors. I mean, guys, that's what's selling. We're like, okay, we're figuring this out. People are not looking for grandma and great grandma's antiques. They're looking for mom and dad's antiques. And I mean, then it goes back to, okay, antiques. What's an antique? You want an age-old question? 100 years is an antique. Oh, okay. 25 years is an antique. Okay. 50, I'm more like the 50 to 75 year range is what I consider antique. So that gets you back to what, the 40s to 70s. 70s not so much, probably 40s, 60s is what I consider older items. 40s and way long ago, obviously, are antiques. But that is what we figured out real fast. The older generation was out of touch. So let's move on to the newer generation. What were these kids coming in and doing? Now, when I first started talking about the newer generation, let me tell you, most of our clientele in our store, 20s, late 20s to mid 50s. So I consider that mid 50s, older generation, but the middle generation, I'll say, the 20s is younger, 30s younger, and man, they come in and they buy like crazy. And you're like, oh, they don't buy the good old antiques. Oh, no, au contraire. Because it is not that. It is these things right here. Ball jars, kitchenware. And you're like, what do they do with egg beaters? It's wall decor to them. And they do use them as well. We have some that come in looking for multiple kitchen items to use. And so what they do is they repurpose and they decorate. So instead of the stuff that the older generation used as functionality that they needed, the younger generation now uses as decor, as, you know, something they display, which is absolutely amazing. I mean, look at some of these amazing things that people are out there repurposing. So you're like, what do I do with a sewing machine? Nobody wants a sewing machine. Here's what the newer generation does with a sewing machine. They take them and they turn them into something else. They turn this into a beautiful end table, and he's sold multiple end tables with the sewing machine cast iron bases that nobody had anything to do with. So as you're going through and thinking, what are these young kids doing? They don't care about my antiques. No, they don't care about your antiques, but they do care about antiques. There's plenty of antiques out there that they're out there buying. I wouldn't have been in business for over a decade if they're not out there buying antiques. So when you're looking out there and you're looking, wondering what younger kids are doing, follow the trends. The Victrolas are not the way to go, but the records are definitely the way to go. There's a lot of kids out there collecting antiques. We have vendors in our shop that are in their 20s, multiple vendors that are in their 20s. We have plenty of vendors in their 30s. We also have vendors in our 40s and 50s and 60s. Don't get me wrong, but the younger kids still enjoy antiques. They enjoy the stories. They enjoy the functionality of some of these things. It takes them back to a simpler time. And when you take people back to a simpler time, it just makes them feel better. And I tell you, like I told you at the beginning of the video, we're here 3,000 days so far. If you think we're still in business with people from 50s to 80s, you are completely wrong. The younger kids are what's going to drive this, and all it's going to happen is the word antique just gets changed. It evolves. Just like everything else in the world, it evolves to something better. And the young kids are going to take over the antiquing world, and they're going to turn it into what they consider antique. So as much as the, people born in the late 1800s probably didn't really think much about our antiques or your antiques, they had their own style of antiques. As much as the people born in the early 1900s had their style of antiques. And when I get to the certain age, I have a certain style of antique. So it's not necessarily they're not into antiques. They're just going to redefine antiques. And that's something I'm very excited for. So when the young kids come in and they're buying these stop signs, they're buying the tractor seats, they're buying all of these amazing items that we offer, it's because they enjoy antiques. They just enjoy them differently than you do. So guys, I'm telling you, don't sleep on the younger generation in antiques, because they're going to drive this and keep it going for decades and centuries. And there's always going to be an antique shop, because there's always going to be people out there collecting. And no matter what they collect, antique shops will be there to provide it. So next time you walk into an antique store and you ask their owner, man, young kids hate antiques, please watch this video again and know that the young kids are out there buying antiques. They're buying vintage. They're buying all of those things that you guys think they're just throwing away. They're just doing something different with it. And yes, there's always outliers. Yeah, maybe they're not buying their dish sets. Maybe they're not buying all the Crocs, and maybe they're not buying, the stuff that you really treasure, the Avon, the precious moments. Maybe they're not buying that stuff. But it doesn't mean they don't appreciate many other antiques. It's just they're not into your antiques. They're into what they, want to collect and get into antiques. Young kids all the time are in here buying cast iron, porcelain signs, gas and oil, stuff that's from the early 1900s. They buy it like crazy. you just have to start doing more to your audience. If you're going to sell antiques, you got to know your audience. And if your audience doesn't want dish sets, guess what? Dish sets are not going to be the way to go. Or instead of selling the 150 piece, maybe trying to sell like the 50 piece. We do sell dish sets here. We do sell Crocs here. We do sell precious moments here. Guys, we sell all that stuff that you think everybody's throwing away. It's just not as much as you'd think. Not as much that we sell Avon here. We just don't sell it for 50 bucks. We sell it for $2, $3, and it still sells. But you just have to know your clientele, and that's what really comes out of this whole thing. The older generation thinks the youngers don't care. The youngers think the olders are out of touch. That's just an age-old question that's been going on for decades, and it's going to go on way longer past when I pass away. So just understand your clientele, and guys, I'm telling you, the young kids do appreciate what you have. They just don't appreciate everything you have. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed the video, do those things, all those likes, those comments, those shares, subscribe to the channel, let us know where you're watching from today. And when you guys get some time, come out and see us and get your antique fix on M66. See you guys later.